This is the project we'll be making today using a Flourished script font. Hello, lettering friend. February 2023 marks the second anniversary of my book, Handlettering for Beginners, being published. So to celebrate, we're going to do some fun font projects together from the end of the book. And in my next few videos, I'm going to give you a tutorial for all of the fonts so you can actually use them in your journal. For today's project, you will need a pencil and a journal. I'm using my Archer and Olive journal, and any pencil will do just fine, but you really need a pencil today. Then you'll need a brush pen. I'm using my Winsor & Newton watercolor brush pens. And you'll also need a fine tip gray pen. That's how I'm going to add the shadows. And then also some rainbow colors if you want to add this border. I'm using my Marvy Colorin brush pens. To get started, let's first take a look at the Flourished script font. So here is what it looks like. I'm just taking tracing paper and then I'm going to trace this font. If you would like to trace it as well, you can find it in my book or just look over this to get a feel for how this font looks. You can see there's a lot of loops and curls. And this is just to get you feeling comfortable with adding those loops and curls to your letters. We're going to change it depending on what your quote is and what letters and words you're using. Flourishes will change so much just because of how different letters allow for different types of flourishes. But it's important just to feel comfortable moving your pen in lots of little loops. This Flourished font is a really great start to learning all the different flourishes that you can do. And this is the project that I made for the book. You can see I added the shadows, so that's what I'm going to do in today's project as well. And one thing really important as we get started is that flourishes, there are so many different ways you can do it. So I use a pencil first and I just explore what will my word look like if I add flourishes. I was just playing around with different combinations of words and flourishes here to find one that I loved. And what I came up with was grace and hope. So I don't really know what I was trying to say, live with grace and hope, but I love the way that I could flourish with these two words on top of each other. I think they turned out really pretty, so I wanted to include that in my journal. And you see it starts with a pencil sketch and it gets pretty messy as I'm trying to figure out where exactly these flourishes should go to balance my piece. And then I'll just clean it up with an eraser and move on to the brush pen. So like I said, I'm using my Winsor & Newton watercolor marker. These ones are really, really great. And I'm just tracing my pencil sketch. It's okay if it's not exact because I'm going to erase the pencil at the end. But the reason why I loved grace and hope together, I felt like they were really balanced because they both have a descending loop. So the descending of the G has that really pretty loop to go underline grace, as well as the P in hope. That one also made a really pretty underlining flourish. And another great place to flourish is any of the ascending loops. So like that H, that could have been all different types of flourishes. I just kept it simple to the side there so that it wouldn't run into the flourish of the G. And then I really like having that line to letter on top of when I did live with, and they just filled in the little space there and followed the curve. I could have also added some kind of word on the flourish of the P, but I couldn't think of anything to end this quote. Here I am doing an offset shadow. So if I was just going to do a regular shadow, I would probably use a brush pen and just go directly to the side. But because this is offset, I'm using a fine tip pen and it is a little bit away from my letters. And my go-to rule for shadows is to the right and under. You just want to make sure that your shadows are on the same side of the letter all throughout your word. So I always just say to the right and under. And that's how I know where to place my shadows. And as you can see, my offset shadows aren't exactly aligned. They're not all in the same distance away from my letter, and that's okay. It would probably look a little more clean and consistent if it was, but this year I'm really working on not being a perfectionist, and that starts right in my journal as I'm allowing it to not be perfect and letting it still be beautiful. And I love this page, even with its imperfections. That is one of the best parts about hand lettering, that because it is done by hand, it's going to be unique and different every single time. So it's allowing for those imperfections. And I'm learning that I can carry that over into my life as I'm trying to not be as much of a perfectionist. And the other thing about this piece is that it was not centered. I just started writing grace and hope and then realized that it's not in the center of the page, and so it was this weird spacing on the outside. So I decided to add this color border to fill in that space, and I ended up liking that even better, to have the color with the black and gray of the words. And these pens, these are my Marvy Color-In brush markers. They have a really thick brush tip, and I love how the colors turned out together. I think this looks really pretty, and I'm excited to have this page in my journal with a flourished script. Flourishing can feel overwhelming because there is not just one right way and one hard and fast rule with your flourishes, but just remember, you get to have fun with it and explore and make it your own. If you are excited for the next font video, it's going to be the chunky faux calligraphy, and this one is so much fun. I will leave my playlist right here so you can see all of the different font tutorials in this series. I'll see you there.